to Getting Sketchy Live, brought to you by thevirtualinstructor.com. And now, let's get sketchy.
Hello there, everyone. Matt here with thevirtualinstructor.com, and welcome to Gettin Sketchy Live, the greatest live broadcast in all of YouTube. I'll lower my chair there. Hope everybody's doing fantastic tonight as we go into, what is this, episode 4?
That's right.
Season 14?
That's right, your second drawing of the season.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome. Tonight we're going to be working with watercolor and watercolor pencils, and I am super nervous about this one because I just have a blank sheet of paper in front of me and some watercolor and only 45 minutes to create this drawing. So for those of you who are new to Getting Sketchy, what this show is all about is we create, either myself or Ashley, we try to create an image for you, usually a drawing, but tonight it's going to be painting-esque, within 45 minutes from start to finish. So it's usually sketchy and loose, and it will be so tonight. We have a timer and everything, and of course this is broadcast live, so if you're watching the live version, this is happening right now while you're watching it. So you can see the blood and the sweat that comes off of our forehead and drips onto the paper. But like always, I'm joined by Ashley, sitting over there. Ashley, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thank you for asking. I hope you folks are doing well and you're excited to paint along with Matt tonight. I've seen his reference and it looks like a great choice for watercolor, so we'll see how he does.
Yes, we will see how he does, for sure. Anyway, if you are watching the live version of this broadcast, there's a chat box there on YouTube. You can post comments and questions, of course, during tonight's broadcast. If you do have a comment or question that's directed specifically at Ashley or I, if you'll put that in capital letters, or better yet, use the super chat function. The super chat function does cost a little bit of money, but it helps out the program, and it also will have it will display your comment or question in the chat box in a wonderful fashion.
It won't be missed.
It won't be missed, and we'll see it, and we'll be able to read it for you guys and answer those questions and comments for you as well. And if you do like this video, make sure you give it a like. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe. It's completely free. We do a lot more on this channel besides Getting Sketchy. We are in season 14, though, of Getting Sketchy. And if you want to take your drawing and painting skills to another level, then you've got to go over to thevirtualinstructor.com. I have a lot of videos on YouTube. I think it's over 600 videos right now, but altogether, all the art instruction videos that we've ever made, numbers over 2,200. So there's a lot more instructional videos over at thevirtualinstructor.com. And we have a program over there designed to help you get better at drawing and painting. We cover pretty much every drawing and painting media and subject matter that you can imagine over there. There's courses, there's classes, there's ebooks. There's even a year-long curriculum for visual arts teachers. I also do weekly critiques as part of the Members Minute, where I critique member-submitted artwork. There is so much to explore over there. What a wonderful community of people that we have over there too. Very supportive artists, just like you. If you want to check out the membership program, there's a link in the description below this video. Everyone starts out with a week-long trial for free, so you can see if the program's right for you. And then beyond that, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you really can't go wrong. Again, link in the description below to check that out. And also, if you want to get on our mailing list, where I'll send you a lot of free art lessons as well as free course videos and ebooks, there's a link in the description below for that as well. So I would encourage you guys to check that out. Now, I am working from a photo reference tonight, like always. And if you don't have that photo reference, well, you can find it. And the way to find it is to go to the YouTube channel, the Virtual Instructor YouTube channel. And to get to that, all you have to do is click on the little icon of my face underneath this video. And then on the next page, that is the YouTube channel. Look for the Post tab. It used to be the Community tab. They've changed it to the Post tab. Click on that tab, and the top post will be the photo reference that you can download with a link back to this video page. So you can leave, get the photo reference, and come right back, of course. All right, and it looks like Jan has already given us a super chat. Thank you so much for that, Jan. We will read your comment in just a minute and give you the cheer. I think that's it before we go into it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's all. We can go ahead and switch over, look at your materials, and give Jan his cheer.
All right, sounds good. All right, we're going to switch over, and I'm going to do some art calisthenics there in between. So let's go ahead and do that now. And I was all excited about how well I did all that stuff, and then knocked the palette cam.
Is that what happened?
That's what
Well,
happened.
you were doing your calisthenics. You had your headband on, so it took a few minutes. But
All right,
he's back.
first we'll give Jan his cheer.
Yeah!
Oh, yeah. And Jan's comment is, all drawing and painting media are the best, but watercolor is the bestest. Looking forward to this. Wink, smiley face emoji. Thank you so much for that, Jan. We really appreciate it.
Well, Jan is glad you're working with watercolor, and you've been using watercolor a little more frequently, I've noticed, in the last few seasons.
Well, it's only been, I think, twice. No, 3 times. This will be the third time.
This is the third, because you did the cat.
I did the cat,
The outdoor scene.
Right, and this will be
then,
number 3. Here.
Right, so watercolor is starting to make a sort of a frequent appearance seasonally.
Yeah, well, frequent. All right, so here's a look at the image that we're going to be working from over here. Bring up the timer in just a minute, but first I want to run through the materials. I'm going to be working on Arches cold press 140-pound watercolor paper, and I have marked off a picture plane here with tape, and this measures 6 inches by 8 1/4 inches. So 6 inches wide by 8 1/4 inches, and that is proportional to the reference. Now, you'll notice at the bottom of the reference there looks like a computer error there. That is not a computer error. I did not like the way the original image was cropped. The composition was very heavy on the bottom. So I changed the composition and added a little bit of space down there at the bottom. I don't know what we're going to do in the background. If anything, we'll do a little bit in the background, but we're not going to be covering the entire background. I've got some watercolor paints. These are Winsor & Newton Professional Watercolor. And I'll switch over here. Hopefully I've chosen the right camera. There we go. Just ignore that timer. This is the camera that I knocked off its haunches here. We'll move it back over here.
There we go.
So I have these watercolor paints arranged in this palette here, and I'll be pulling from them. I'm going to do my best to name the colors, but probably just to save time, I'm going to describe the colors that I'm using instead of giving you the specific color name, because I'll have to look on my color chart, and that will take up time. So I'm going to be working really quickly here tonight. You can use any brand of watercolor that you wish, and you can use colors that are just similar to the ones that I choose. I also have Durant watercolor pencils at the ready. I don't know how much I'm going to be using these as well, but I have them here. So maybe for some of the detailed areas, or maybe to create a little bit more of the illusion of the feathers, I'll be reaching for those. I'm not really sure. I'm just going to go into this, start making marks, and see what I can create instead of 45 minutes. Now, as probably most of you know, Ashley determined that we were going to be working from prompts this season, and the prompts are songs, and he threw that on me randomly in the middle of the first episode. In the middle of the first episode. So I decided to continue with that, and the prompt here is, or the song is, "Three Little Birds" by Bob Marley. Now, you might be saying, well, there's only 2 birds there. Well, this is a 45-minute show. Yeah, you want 3 birds, you got to have an hour. Right. We don't have an hour. Need more than an hour, really. Need more than an hour for this one. But so there's really 3 birds here, but the 3rd bird is behind those 2, snuggled up really nice and close. We'll just say that.
Yeah, we can't say it. Now, speaking of the background and all that, Buddy perceptively has noticed that the birds are pretty green, and so is the background. So she was wondering if you plan to change or would recommend changing the background color to make the birds pop more. You can, but right now what we've got in the reference is somewhat of a complementary scheme. So we've got red and greens being the 2 dominant colors. If you chose a color in the background like purple or something like that, that would throw off that scheme a little bit. I'm not, like I said, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do in the background. I probably will do different variations of green in the background. I mean, right now, the background is generally darker than the birds.
Right.
So you're still getting a lot of good value contrast. And where the birds are darker, like in the tail, it almost looks black. So you're still getting a value contrast throughout.
Yeah. The most important thing is contrast and value. Color is really secondary to value. Color is very important, but not quite as important as value.
Some of those greens back there are really dull, especially on the right.
Right.
So that could be a good direction to go, buddy. You could use, glazes or layers of green and gray over each other in places if you were afraid that that the background is going to compete with the brightness and the color of the birds.
Yeah. And Nick, I see your comment there. I'm going to go ahead and address this now. Hello, it's the 12-year-old again. I know it says 13 years of age. However, can I still compete to get the subscription using my father's account? Nick, it's very clear with YouTube's terms and conditions that you cannot be younger than 13 years old. So your father can win a subscription, but you can't. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully we can read that one. All right.
That one makes sense to me. Think about that, Nick.
Yeah. All right. Good. All right. I'm going to start with a graphite pencil here, and I think this might be 2B graphite in here. It's not going to make super dark marks here, but it's going to be dark enough for me to see it on the watercolor paper. And the plan of attack here is to draw out the contours of the birds first, and then just start adding watercolor washes on top. So I'm going to go ahead and start the timer, nervously start the timer.
We're rolling.
And start drawing. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to locate where the top head of our first bird is located. And I'm just going to draw a light line where that is, and maybe a light line where the top of the head of the second bird is located. And it looks like the branch kind of goes off the side of the picture plane here, just maybe a little bit under halfway. And then on the other side, it's quite a bit closer to the bottom of the picture plane. So this is an element that goes off the side of the picture plane. And it's also an element that's going to be helpful in determining where these birds are located. So I'm going to start at the top of the head of the first bird. And I'm just going to kind of think about a shape here for the head, and just try to get an idea of where that is. Now, if there's variations in this image, that's okay. We still just want it to look like a bird. So I'm kind of figuring out where an eye might be. I'm going to move it over just a little bit.
Got a couple of eyes on this side of the head. It's a cubist piece.
Right. We're going to draw all sides of the birds tonight, just like Picasso. All right, so if the top of the beak is here, that eye is just a little bit underneath it. Now there's 3 eyes on here. Look at that.
All right, Nick goes on to say, this is my father's account. I'm Jonah. So yes. All right, then Jonah, I apologize. We got your name right. Very good.
Jonah, I'm not going to mess with YouTube terms and conditions. That's just the way it is. So, and the contest Jonah is talking about is on the video that I posted yesterday, which was the studio tour. So you have to go check out that video to see what he's talking about. I'm not going to tell you here. I only want the true people to be involved with that. The truest fans of all. All right, and then we've got our second bird kind of coming over here. Somebody said my 3 Little Birds was lame.
The song?
Yeah,
the
said that was lame.
Well, it's still a song, and so it works for our theme.
And there's no rules here.
This is 2 Little Birds, and it's totally different.
Two little birds sit on my window.
When I saw your prompt, I was telling Matt earlier that I thought of 3 Little Birds, but then I did some quick math in my head and came up with the 2 birds and second guessed myself, and I couldn't think of any song that was titled around lovebirds. So
there actually is lovebird song.
I'm sure there is. There has to be. I just couldn't think of a title.
Right. Who wouldn't, if they haven't used that, that's quite an opportunity.
Yeah.
Maybe it's too cliche. All right.
June says she loves the studio tour. Not at all what she pictured your space would look like.
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder how it was
says it
pictured.
was her that said the birds were lame, but that it's a good song, and that she says my lame sense of humor. Don't beat yourself up, June. And a lot of songs that I liked when I was younger, I listened to so much that I don't like hearing them anymore. And they're songs that I liked. So I think you can just wear stuff out, Some songs.
I imagine that you've listened to too much Bob Marley.
I have listened to a lot of Bob Marley.
Yeah, and I'm the same way.
It was very popular when we were growing up.
Yeah, and I think there's a certain age where you're like really into Bob Marley, and it's usually like the college age.
You have to pass through that to get to adulthood.
All right, I'm giving a little indication of where I see changes in value. So I've got a dark shape right here, and that just kind of drew some lines to indicate where that is. And do a little bit more work on the branch here. And then we'll go ahead and move over to this second bird. Then I'll work down from there. So this bird's got its beak right into the other bird's beak. And its eye is way down here.
All right. Well, good job capturing the relationship of those two heads already.
Thank you.
Looks good.
This little eye opening is going to have, or this little area that's light is going to have to be a little bit larger. And we got a little tiny half beak down here, the bottom beak. And it gets pretty dark underneath there. I'm going to go ahead and plan out that little dark shape too. Lighter orange at the top, or kind of a earthier orange.
Charles has a good question about your paper selection. And, we occasionally have talked a lot about watercolor paper at the live classes, but much less so here on Gettin Sketchy. Charles asks, "Hi Matt, why do you choose cold pressed paper over hot pressed paper?"
Well, hot pressed paper, it has a smooth surface and is really better, in my opinion, for when you're working with like line and wash, because the brush strokes are going to be a little bit more visible on hot pressed paper, and with the cold pressed paper, the brush strokes kind of melt into the surface, which is a little bit more of what I want for this.
Especially with these mingling colors that we see up around the neck and head area. That'll be good. Your strokes, your marks aren't quite as apparent. So that's a good reason. And I don't mind using rough watercolor paper if it's a pretty big watercolor, a pretty big piece.
Yeah, rough watercolor paper is fantastic. And it has a texture associated with it. But hot press I'll use hot press when I'm using line and wash, pen and ink with watercolor. All right, the back part of the body here. It's going to go down. A little bit of a poof out of the feathers down here. Just kind of make this bird a little bit more angular.
All right, Sandra tells us that there is a song that would fit your reference pretty well. It's called Two Little Dicky Birds.
Okay.
So I don't know who sings that, but that's what it is.
Well, I know it seems like I am turning in homework or something, and I got to fall within the parameters of the assignment. That's not at all what's happening.
Oh no. There's no grade here.
No, I am. All I care about is creating an image that is fun for you guys to watch being created, and you can learn some things. And also, the result is a pretty good quality for 45 minutes.
Yeah, and these themes, we make them up. We don't have, we're not bound to them.
Right. No rules.
Tyrone points out that hot pressed paper is nice for colored pencils in his experience.
Yes, some hot press watercolor is good for that. It's also good for graphite too. I've done a couple drawings on hot press watercolor paper that
Graphite did well. It could be
the
pretty soft.
Heritage paper by Canson. It's really good for that.
All right. Well, the drawing's going in reasonably fast. And
It's got to go in fast.
Right, it's got to, because there's a painting to do.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. About right here, we've got this shadow that comes up.
Drawing that shape of that dark shadow right now.
Yeah, just trying to get
halfway down on our bird to the right.
An idea where the values change. Just a general idea. Lots of little collections of feathers here.
Yeah, it gets pretty bumpy down there in the feathers. Lots of
overlapping.
A lot of values in that small little area.
I don't want this bird to be left out over here. Make sure that there's...
He's sort of our focal point for me. You know, the other bird seems to be paying attention to him. He seems like the protagonist here, the main character. The one on the left. And I say he. I don't know if either of them are male or one of them. I have no clue, but they both look really similar. And in bird world, and I just mean my yard. I noticed that the male birds look pretty different from their female counterparts in terms of their color. So I don't know. I don't know about these. Maybe they're buddies.
Well, if they're not buddies, they are now. All right, their legs and little taloned feet are all running together here.
Tyrone's wondering, I know this isn't maybe directed at us because it's not in capital letters, but I'm reading your comments anyway out there, and he's wondering about the graphite, and if the graphite is going to contaminate your bright colors, or if it would in fact maybe help with the definition and detail of the birds. Are you going to use a kneaded eraser?
I am. I'm planning on using a kneaded eraser.
Okay.
After this, but even still, if you have some graphite lines that show in a watercolor painting, that's not a big deal. That's kind of part of watercolor painting sometimes.
It is for me.
Yeah.
I know there are watercolor artists that don't marks. They like to just start painting. And that's fine. It's a great and fun experience. Sometimes it's not a fun experience.
Some people think that's a fun experience.
Right. It can be when it works, you know.
I'm not one of those people.
I don't have a problem when I look at watercolor, if I can see some pencil marks in there. For me, it doesn't take anything away from the artwork or make me think, oh, this person's not as skilled as they should be. Because for all the other media, and many of the media that we work with are, in fact, drawing media. We don't start with a painting to end up with our drawing, you know. But in the case of painting, we almost always start with a drawing with the other media. Oil paint. I mean, I've made plenty of oil paintings without starting with a pencil drawing, but I still started with a lot of paint. And, you know, it gets totally covered up with oil paint or with acrylic paint or gouache, not so much with watercolor. So I wouldn't want to start with bold, bright, thin watercolor lines to make my drawing. And that's how I start sometimes with acrylic, with oils. So I think the graphite is a good choice. And, you know, you can lighten it to the extent that it's almost imperceptible. If you've got good eyes, you could lighten it so that you could just barely see it before you started painting with an eraser.
All right, just looking at these shapes that come down, that are the tail feathers. And I'm going to kind of make some of this up down here at the end because it's kind of lost. But overall, this is just kind of a dark shape anyway.
Yeah, it's pretty flat shape. Janine tells us that most parrot species are sexually monomorphic. It's a new word for me. That means the males and the females look the same. So not like my yard.
Yeah, these are parakeets too. Yeah.
They're parakeets?
They are parakeets.
Okay.
So we've got a pair of keats.
Huh.
All right. Let's see if I got a kneaded eraser in here. Time is ticking. Got a kneaded eraser out here somewhere. So we're working with charcoal. In the next lesson this evening. All right, so I'm going to take a kneaded eraser and just kind of gently go over the graphite drawing. And I have spent 15 minutes on that drawing. That is too much time. All right.
All right, much lighter.
Nice and lighter.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now we're going to go over here to the palette, and I'm going to start with kind of a medium-sized brush. This is a Grumbacher number 6. I'm going to grab a little bit of this Viridian type green here, and a little bit of sap green. Pull that out on the palette, and I'm also going to get, let's see, a little bit of burnt sienna. A little bit of that out here. And also a touch of Windsor orange. I believe
that's a bright one.
The color. And a little bit of Windsor red. Just getting some colors out here. And some Payne's Gray.
Thank you for comments out there about the sound. Things look okay on our end. There were some drop frames earlier, but that seems to have resolved. So maybe the sound.
Oh yeah, there were some drop frames.
There were a few, but not recently. So hopefully the sound will clear up on its own on YouTube's end.
What's the issue with the sound?
Just it's cutting in and out a little bit for folks.
Oh. Well, that's not good.
And hopefully not everybody.
All right, we're going to start by mixing these greens a little bit. And I'm going to start with a light wash on the body of our first parakeet here.
Has begun.
I'm going to go quickly here.
Steve says, congratulations on 1 million subscribers. I loved the studio tour video.
Thank you.
It looks like Jennifer Vaughn is not having a problem with the sound, so it must be localized. So hopefully that'll clear up for everybody. Thank you guys for your comments.
All right, that green is pretty limey that's out there. So I think I'm going to get some of that with the watercolor pencils, maybe.
This is Winsor & Newton brand watercolor paint.
That is correct. Just getting down some color real quick.
Does that have some of that red in it?
No, not yet. It does have. It has a little bit of. It's kind of grayed a little bit because of the other colors that I've mixed. There's still a little bit in the brush.
I see.
I've added a little bit of gamboge.
All right, Brenda says, Matt, I watched your studio tour yesterday. Do both you and Ashley have studios at home set up similar to your studio in your videos? I have a basement studio. I've got a basement area that I work in. So it's, but with many fewer lights and cameras. Lights just for the artwork. for me to see.
Use a little paper towel there. Dab it up a little bit.
It's a very important supply. Maybe not sold in art stores, but it's still an important art supply. Your paper towels and rags. Couldn't do what we do without them. But he says, do you actually work with less water so you don't have to wait too long for the layers to dry?
I am working with less water.
It's a good question.
Yeah. For speed.
And I know you have a hair dryer.
I do, yeah.
Do you plan to use it? I mean, have you thought about that? Like you need something dry?
I'm not thinking that far ahead.
Okay.
If I have to dry an area, I'll grab the hair dryer.
Very good.
All right, I'm going to take a little bit of the Windsor orange, Windsor red, and mix it with a little bit of burnt sienna. Maybe just a touch of Payne's Gray to mute it a little bit.
All right, and wherever these new colors go down, they're going to mingle some. Just even with Matt using a little less water, they're still going to be mingling because there's no time to let it dry, and that's why this subject works, because the feathers kind of transition into one in and out of color without too sharp of a delineation. So I think again,
we want them to mingle a little
right.
bit.
We want that. Those soft bleeding edges. All right, I'm being told by Brazen Hearted this is a pair of black-cheeked lovebirds. These are lovebirds.
The description was parakeets.
I don't know. They don't look like parakeets to me. And I'm only ever around my brother's parakeets.
Well, there's lots of different types of parakeets.
Oh, yeah, probably hundreds and hundreds.
These are... In the description for this image, it did call them parakeets.
And both things can be true. Both the description and what they are. Let's look up black-cheeked lovebirds. Because they do have dark little cheeks.
All right, so I've got a little bit more of that sap green with a little bit of the gamboge here. I'm just going to try to bring down, try to get a little bit more variety in the color.
Maybe black-cheeked lovebirds are a type of parakeet.
Maybe they are.
Know.
We have no idea.
It says black-cheeked lovebirds are a small parrot species. And parrot and parakeet sound similar. They're the same. They're the same. I've declared them the same. Well, they're
parakeets or parrots are they're the same.
Well, I've declared them the same for the purposes of our programming. No, they're just cute little birds. Okay, they're both in the parrot family, so they're similar. We'll go with similar. And Janine's using the Audubon app, and I trust that. I've learned to trust the name of Audubon with regard to all things birds.
Okay. Let's go ahead and add... I'm going to add the color that I think is going to be good for the bulk of the chest of the bird, but I'm going to use a little bit of watercolor pencil here.
Oh. This is different.
Because the green is just so vibrant here. And I kind of feel like this is going to be a little bit better.
I imagined that you would put a light wash over both birds and then start building up values with the pencils.
Well, I am still going to use the pencils, and I just want to get a little bit of this brighter green color in play. So I'm putting a light application with the pencil, and then I'm going to activate that and see what we get here.
I keep forgetting that Charles is a retired zookeeper, and we can direct all of our animal-related questions to him. Thank you, Charles. Thank you for the information. Citizen. Yeah, Charles is explaining how to pronounce the name, the family name for parrots or parrot-like birds, I suppose. But I may need a pronunciation help for the pronunciation help. Is it citizen, or citizene? I'm going to go with citizen. I hope that's right. Thanks, Charles. Frankie asks, do you do any type of practice like mixing paints or drawing the birds or etc. before going live? Frankie, that's a great question.
Sometimes I do. I did not beforehand here.
I'm the same way. Some subjects I'll do it. There have been a very few that I have completed, complete drawings, like done the whole, set up a timer, draw for 45 minutes and see where I get to. I used to do that more often than I do now. Now when I practice, it's more like what you're talking about, Frankie. It's just like practicing pieces of what I'm going to do. Like I might just make the initial line drawing and time myself to see if I'm going to get to, to the next step in what I would estimate to be quick enough. And that helps me decide if I'm picking a subject that's suitable or not for the format, the time limit. So occasionally, and then occasionally I have, I'll go ahead and look at tools beforehand, like watercolor, pastel or colored pencils, and go ahead and kind of look at the colors and pick those out beforehand. So there is sometimes some preparation, some preparatory work that goes into making these sketches or sketchy paintings. But I would say that the majority of the time, Matt and I just go for it. I want to keep it fresh for you guys. These are sketches. What do you think?
Most of the time it is just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Bring a little bit more orange into this again.
Now, I was looking at the chat. After you applied water to the watercolor pencil, did you blot it, or did it come out sort of the value and intensity that you were shooting for?
No, I did blot it on the breasts.
Okay.
To try to create a little bit of a highlight there.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes that's something. I don't use watercolor pencils a lot, and it takes some getting used to, like how much to put down on the paper. When you activate it, is it going to be as strong as you hope or too strong? And usually that's the tendency for me because I am a little heavy-handed sometimes. So I'd say there's a little learning curve there, kind of estimating or maybe guesstimating what your watercolor is going to look like after you've applied water with regard to how much pencil you're actually putting down beforehand. So that would be something that I would want to experiment with. If I were doing this drawing, I might apply a little bit of that to the paper and activate it just to get a feel for the intensity and darkness of the value with different levels of watercolor pencil application.
All right, let's get some of the color on the beaks on here. I'm going to use the Windsor red, and a little bit of the Windsor orange. This is going to be pretty bright and strong. But we want it to be bright and strong. A little bit of water on the brush. Kind of get a little bit fainter. Leave a little bit of a highlight there on the bill, or it fades out. Add a little bit of Payne's Gray to it, make a darker version. Right in here, start getting some darker values in here. You don't want that to bleed though. Let's stop that right there.
Good job saving a little highlight on that bird's beak.
Thanks. Actually, I think we're going to come back to that other side because to let it dry a little bit. Going a little quick here, but I see the time and I'm freaking out.
2/3 of the program has elapsed. Well, I love the mingling of the colors.
Well, they're mingling.
Mm-hmm.
Getting to know each other.
Charles has been fielding questions about being a zookeeper, and he was asked if he was bitten a lot as a zookeeper. He said he never got close and didn't get. I'm sure it was best practices not to get close enough to any of the animals that could actually bite you and hurt you. But he did mention he was bitten by a parrot. So I'll bet they could hurt you. I mean, this is some serious beaks for opening up things. I would imagine they could open us up pretty well with those if they wanted to. Bird feet look so strong and dangerous.
All right, we're going to come back to the beaks and stuff, but right now I'm going to get some of these darker tones in here. This is Payne's Gray mixed with our base color green.
Lord Engine has also been bitten by a parrot. Stay away from parrots, folks.
No kidding.
So the bird was the one of the animals that that I was not allowed to have when I was growing up. So always hated that. That's why, and Matt knows, and many of you know, I have a dream of falconry. So and that's where it comes from, because I was denied a bird as a child. So,
well, it's good to have dreams, Ashley.
Yeah, and they probably all stem from our childhood somewhere. My brother keeps birds. He's had a lot of birds. In fact, the parakeet he has now, I think he captured it. It was like an escaped parakeet.
He captured it?
Like it was outside of his outside of where he lived. He's moved since then, but sometimes they get out, and get away from people, I guess. My wife has had a parakeet hanging out around her place of business for a few days not long ago, and I don't think they do well in the in the wild.
The wild.
I know it seems like they would, right? Because they're wild animals, but
well,
maybe in a city environment they don't do so well. So
they're not necessarily wild if they've been living in a cage.
No, that's true. That's true. And some of them can have, like, I guess, clipped wings where they don't fly very well, but they may still get out. But anyway, so my brother has a rescue, a parakeet rescue, and he's really good with these types of birds. He's super attentive to them. He brings them with him on our vacations, our family vacations, and it seems like we really get to know my brother's birds.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, I've started with lighter applications and I'm working my way to the darker ones. And that's typically how you probably want to approach watercolor painting. So if you're wondering where all the dark values were, well, they were waiting. They were waiting to be added.
Yeah, working from light to dark.
And, honestly, there's a lot more color that I can continue to add to this, obviously, but I'm not going to have a whole lot of time. So I'm trying to get some of these dark values at least in place a little bit before we kind of push it a little bit further.
Yeah, we got to in this time drawings and paintings, which I think is a great exercise to do even on your own, not just for learning and entertainment purposes like here on Gettin Sketchy. It forces you to look at your subject, whether it's from a photograph or like a still life that's set up in front of you, and ask yourself what's the most important. Like, what, with the time that I have, where do I need to go? What's important? And I think that helps us to analyze our artwork and start noticing where we would be, I guess, more efficiently spending our time. Because when we've got all the time in the world, you know, it's nice, but sometimes it can lead to spending more time on our artwork than we actually need to for the same result. Sometimes we can overwork a passage in the artwork because we have this desire to, you know, get it right. But the time drawing takes a little bit of that away and helps us determine, or forces us to try to determine, what are the essential elements of our subject. And of course, one of them is always going to be value. So there's a lot of, like Matt says, a lot of colors in here, a lot of things happen in the color, but just creating the differences in value, that's what's going to say the most about these birds.
Trying to do a little bit of dry brush here.
Yeah, see that.
Give it a little bit of texture.
I've got a question from Charles. He says, do you see tweaking a finished piece of any kind as cheating, for example, in Photoshop or Procreate? Like finishing an artwork and then tweaking it digitally before you show it. I don't see any problem with that. You know, if it's intended to be
you're using
shown.
another tool.
Yeah.
To finish a piece of art. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
So I would think of it as like kind of like a mixed media piece. You know, I mean, I've got pieces that are entirely done in painting. I guess with paint. I mean to say physical paint, and then I messed around with them in Photoshop, and then that's what I displayed, or shared. You know, I should say, not displayed. These are images that were meant to be seen through a digital medium anyway. No one was ever going to see the physical artwork that I had started with. So yeah, in my opinion, you can use a program at the very end. Now, if it's for something like, let me give you an example. If you're going to approach a gallery to sell your paintings and they ask you to send them 10 digital examples of your paintings, you need those to match. You don't want to be tweaking and changing stuff, and then they accept you into a show, and you show up with something that is noticeably different in color or contrast, right? So there's times when you wouldn't want to do that. But if folks are going to be seeing it as a digital representation, that's essentially it's going to be a finished piece of it's going to be a file. Then why not?
All right, I just looked at the time, and I can tell you we are going to go over tonight. Probably not. I don't know. I'm not going to say probably.
I think
not
I went over a little bit last week too.
Yeah, it's just you know, this is why I have been reluctant to do watercolor or painting here, because it's just such a time constraint. I feel like I'm going as fast as I possibly can, and there's still so much to do. But that's okay. We'll get it to a point where it is somewhat finished.
Charles, I see your follow-up about changing things just to make them more vibrant or alter colors. Sure, yeah, that's what I'm talking about too. Sometimes I'll use a Photoshop just to pump up the color intensity or the contrast of an artwork, and then use that file that I create as my artwork. So And then, of course, I don't have a problem, and I think I mean, I don't know why anyone would have a problem, but some folks maybe do, and that's fine for them. But I don't have a problem using Photoshop in any stage of my process. So sometimes when I have an artwork that I'll just use oil painting for an example, and I'm partway into the process, I'll take a picture of it, put it in Photoshop, mess around with it in Photoshop for a while, then go back to the easel, the physical painting, and continue working on it with what I've learned from playing around with color options in Photoshop. So I think I use Photoshop almost like as a sandbox sometimes to play with my ideas around the elements of art, color and value and things like that. So, it can be used at any stage. And then, it's just part of your process. Yeah, Dale says the only cheating in art is claiming someone else's work as your own. I would second that. Or even copying a piece of someone else's and claiming it as your own.
That's real bad cheating.
Yeah.
Yeah, just trying to get a little bit of variation of color before we go real dark on the top. And a little bit more of a feeling of form in this bird over here. And I'm having to just kind of insinuate some of the details here.
Mm-hmm. Charles wonders if you're planning on getting into the background still.
I'm going to put a little bit of information in the background, but that is going to be the very end.
Okay. Probably minimally so.
Yeah, it'll be very minimal. All right, let's go ahead and put that dark shape underneath this guy here.
Yep, that's important.
And then we'll put a little information on the branch and the talons. And then we'll go back to the top and get those dark values in there and finish those eyes off.
And get those dark cheeks in there since it's in the name. Well, everybody's rooting you on. Maria says, "Go, Matt." Tick, tick, tick. Laughing emoji.
I don't know if that's rooting me on.
Not sure. And Lord Engine says you're going to wing it for these last few minutes.
That's pretty fun. All right. Actually, let's go ahead and go back into the head now.
All right.
All right. I'm going to use a little bit of Payne's Gray here, and I'm going to put a little bit of burnt sienna in that, so it's got a little bit of color, and also just a touch of ivory black. I don't need much of that at all, but I do want to have a little bit of color in here, so kind of a warmer black. And I have just realized I've done this entire painting with the same brush, which I guess keeps it a little fresher.
You've been using the same brush the whole time?
I have. I just said that. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I was reading. I was reading a comment about that very thing. Bear in the Garden wonders if you were working on this with more time, if that wasn't a constraint, would you use different size brushes in different places more?
Well, I would still probably be using this size brush right now.
Okay.
But as I got into the finer details, I would definitely switch over to a smaller brush.
Okay.
But I don't know how much I'm going to... I know I'm not going to get into the finer details that much in this painting.
And if you got a good round brush, the point is still just as small as it is on a smaller brush. only that it holds more paint, more water, and sometimes that can get away from us. But we can still make very faint marks, or I'm sorry, very thin marks with a larger round brush, as long as it's good quality and hasn't been abused. You take care of your watercolor brushes. Not so much with oil paint brushes. You can mistreat them. But watercolor brushes are delicate. I mean, I've let my oil paint seemingly dry in my oil paint brushes and then just really give them the business over a screen in a brush cleaning jar. And, you know, they come back to life. As long as that paint has only seemed dry for a couple of days, it'll come out. But a nice sable bristle brush, you know, I try to be gentle with those. Preserve that point. John says he always learned to use the biggest brush that could possibly work. And me too, Jan. That was the philosophy that was kind of drilled into me in my college art classes. And so, gosh, if I used a small brush in class, I would have never heard the end of it from my teachers. They liked us to use big brushes.
And that's why I'm still using this brush.
You can do it. I mean, I own some really tiny brushes, but sometimes using them just frustrates me that they don't hold any more paint than they do.
Okay, let's add a little bit of a faint reddish purple to the talons here real quick. Maybe a little bit of gray in there.
We had a question earlier, and it may have been directed to the group. It was about our favorite pencils. What's your favorite pencil? And we have an answer from Melody. She says she loves the Blackwing pencils. I do too. You know, just because they're different. They seem extra long. Maybe it's just because of the way the erasers are made on the end, but they seem extra long, and they're pretty smooth. But my favorite pencil company is Ticonderoga. And of course, it's you know, I think they own Dixon nowadays. Maybe they always have. I used to know more about that. Can't remember, but I like Ticonderoga as a pencil company. But I'll bet I'll probably draw with the Staedtler, or Kimberly pencils the most.
All right, we'll let that little bit of purple dry. We'll come back to it. I know it says that the time's up, but not in my mind.
You know, I didn't even notice. I have learned to tune that timer out.
Go back with a little bit more of the Windsor red up here on the bill. Doesn't look like I'm gonna.
Oh boy, we've got some names coming in for our lovebirds. We've got. Let's see. Oh, wait, I missed one. Hugs and Kisses.
Hugs and Kisses.
Hanny and Moon. I don't know if that's a reference to anything, but those are nice names. And Maria says she just couldn't help it. Donald and Elon. Although, after today, I think there would be a little more space between these two birds.
What happened today?
Oh, boy. All kinds of stuff.
They're not friends anymore?
Not today. Not today, maybe never. I don't know. We'll see how things turn out. Maybe they're just having a fight. But they're having a very public one, aren't they? Which is, in fact, never a good idea. You should never argue with, fight with people in public. And you've invited everybody else into your drama. So, Sonny and Cher, I like that one. Bonnie and Clyde. They would love birds. Maybe they were hate birds. I don't know. There's some bad things.
All right, we'll put a loose indication of some color down here in the branch. And this is a mixture of sap green and burnt sienna.
Okay. Got for names for our birds, we've got Windsor and Newtonia. Or Newtonia. That's it. Windsor and Newtonia.
What happened to old Tanya?
You'd have to ask Windsor about that. Samson and Delilah. I used to know two very large snakes named Samson and Delilah, and also two very large bulldogs named Samson and Delilah. Samson, of course, was quite a bit bigger than Delilah. All good suggestions. You call them whatever you want to call. You call your birds whatever you want to call your birds. All good suggestions. Jay says this is looking great. Just getting that branch in there has created a type of contrast because you've pumped up the color there quite a bit. I know you said it had some green in it, which probably dulled it down some, but it's
yeah. And I have to get a little bit of background in there too.
Just a little splash.
I'm gonna do that in just a minute.
Yeah,
a little bit more color on these beaks here. Not that much.
There we go. Paper towel's doing its job. Tyrone likes Lucy and Ricky. I think that would be good because, you know, these are flamboyant birds. I mean, they've got beautiful colors, and Lucy and Ricky, they were performers, you know.
I'm gonna switch over to a smaller brush here finally to add some of the details in the eye. We're gonna add a little pupil in here. Pupil right there. And then with a little bit of the purple used on the talons, we're going to go around these eyes and a little bit of information about these open white areas up here. And a little indication of shadow.
Mm-hmm. Putting those tiny little details into the focal point area, always a good idea. You don't have to have details everywhere. If you want people to look at an area more or first. It was that illustrator, Matt, who did that video like 15 years ago about drawing. It was digital painting. He was doing a children's book. Remember that guy?
Mm-hmm.
Was his name Lowe?
Yep, William Lowe.
William Lowe. I wanted to say Rob Lowe. William Lowe.
Definitely not Rob.
No, I knew that was wrong. He always would say that, you know, if there's details everywhere, it's like the whole picture is screaming. You know, look at me. And sometimes we need louder passages and quieter ones too. And that translates to more details in some areas and choosing not to use them in other areas.
Yeah, that statement is such a good statement, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. But he says you were doing so great with watercolor sketches, Matt.
Well, thank you. What you can't see or feel is the stress that I'm feeling.
I can see the blood droplets on his forehead.
Yeah, they're probably there. Oh, I wish I had more time on this.
You know, something we've never done is a single drawing over 2 episodes. I guess that would defeat the purpose of the program.
Yeah, that's what we do on the live lessons.
That's right. That would be more like a live class. Mm-hmm. So if you think that would be a good idea for us sometimes, or you'd like to see us return to an artwork, then you should join us in a live class. And tonight's live class starts in 24 minutes.
We got some fixing to do on that face.
In the live class?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we were talking about that. Matt's doing a charcoal portrait of an older gentleman smoking a pipe, and that's what we were talking about. The end of the hour last week was where parts of the face were in relation to each other, and then also in the relation to the picture plane as a whole, the placement.
All right, I have gone way over. I don't care. I make the rules. And I'm going to add some splash of color back here. And it's not going to be a bright color or anything, but we're going to put a little bit of contrasting value back there at least. Right after I separate these birds a little bit more. Some of that dark tone down. There we go.
All right.
All right. So let's add just a bit of color. I'm going to mix up a muted green here. I've got lots of dark value on here on my palette already. And I'm going to just create some dark contrasting areas here. Darker than that though.
There we go. We need this because these are lighter colored birds. Without those dark values around our bird a little bit, you know, they're the darkest thing on the page. So,
and this is really, it might be hard to tell, but it's really a dark green.
mm-hmm.
Just let that kind of.
Brenda says, so Ashley, do you and Matt co-teach in the live classes? It's similar to what we do with Gettin Sketchy. We take turns working on a single piece of artwork, anywhere between usually about 7 and 10 weeks. That's usually around the target, 6 to 10 weeks maybe, and then one of us will answer questions from the chat and talk to folks in the chat about how things are going with their piece that they're using, they're creating along with us. So I guess it would be co-teaching, but only one of us is making an artwork at a time. And, similar to Gettin Sketchy, we try to introduce or bounce around between a lot of different media just for learning purposes. So give folks a chance to return to media they love and also maybe use and work outside of their comfort zone with some media that they're less familiar with or have been avoiding sometimes. And that's even for us. I avoid acrylic paint as much as often as I'm able to avoid it. But I used a live class to try to get past that a little bit. I did very little acrylic painting during my training period, like when I was in college. I painted with acrylics before I went to college, and then I just spent 4.5 years painting in oil paint, and I simply did an independent study in acrylic, and that was it. And so several live classes ago, I did an acrylic painting. So it was a chance for me to revisit a medium that I typically avoid. So we all grow as people in the live class, whether you're the student or the teacher, we're all really growing together. So it's a great experience and a wonderful group that's in the chat. It's much smaller, because it's not YouTube. And so it's kind of a warm and intimate group of folks that are there most weeks. And besides making art together, we get to know each other and about each other's lives. And I think that's been great.
All right, just darkening up some more shadows. I like how
you did a little dry brush around the edges of that too.
Yeah, and well, thanks. And I wanted to point out that I put dark values against light edges and light values against dark edges.
Yeah, that's a good point out.
So there's just so much more to do with this.
Melody reminds us, don't forget to like. That's always appreciated. Hal and Easel, I see your question. What about gouache? But I'm not sure exactly what that's in relation to. But Matt and I do work with gouache sometimes in the live lessons. I feel like I've used gouache here on Gettin Sketchy as well, but it's been a while. I did a bee that I think I used ink, like pen and ink, but also gouache, I think, like 3 seasons ago. And then I believe the last gouache painting that was a live class might have also been one that I did of art supplies. A pencil, shavings from a pencil eraser, and a pencil sharpener. And that painting turned out great. I love it. I framed it. It's in my little studio. Matt, what was the last gouache painting you did? Do you remember?
I want to say it was the M&Ms.
Okay, so that would have been further back. So it's been a little while since we've worked with gouache over there in a live class.
Okay, one final touch.
Bear in the Garden says, I love it. The watercolor makes the birds feel even more warm and affectionate than the photo. Yeah, no, watercolor has a strange power to transform a subject.
All right, so if I were to continue, I would obviously continue to add more variety in the color, some darker areas, shadow, and so on. But I cannot continue. I have to stop at some point, right? But basically, if I were to continue this, it would just be a process of continuing to layer colors, mainly in the areas of darker value, but in the body of the bird as well. Like we can create more variety in the greens right here for sure. You can see how we're starting to get variety in the color a little bit more up here. That would be carried on into the body, in both of these bodies. There's just more opportunities for more greens, different variations of greens in those areas. But for 45 minutes, this isn't a bad sketch.
No, not at all. It's a good sketch. Very nice.
Put a little bit of shadow underneath these talons.
2 little birds.
Pastel pencil, just a couple, or the watercolor pencil, just a little.
Very good. I'm glad you did that.
You are?
Yeah, I was thinking about little dark marks under the feet.
Yeah,
just
to be
20 seconds ago, and then you did that. I think I sent Matt a mental message,
telepathic message.
It worked.
I'm just gonna kind of lightly activate it. Very lightly activate it. Because that got strong. All right. Do we have anything else from
Buddy says the birds look so lovely. Thank you. Jen says it's so good. Melody, it's beautiful, Matt.
Well, thank you, guys. Thank you.
And Maria says, hard not to keep going. I get it, Matt.
Yeah, it is really hard to keep going because I feel like I'm really getting into the painting and it's time to stop. So that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Nature of the beast we created here.
Nature of the beasts, the birds.
Nature of the birds.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and switch back over. If there's nothing else. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us for the last, over an hour. We don't have much time to set up for the next show.
I was thinking about that.
I went way over tonight, guys. I'm sorry for going way over. That's what I was concerned about with this medium and the subject matter. 2 birds instead of 1.
Right.
And also the time constraint. But I am pretty happy with the watercolor painting that I was able to come up with in 45 minutes. Now, next week, Ashley will be doing the drawing. And you have any idea what you're going to do?
No, I don't. I thought about it a little bit today, but I didn't get very far. So I'll listen to some music in the next couple of days and see what speaks to me, see if something jumps out, and start looking for a reference, or maybe even take a reference myself if it's something I have access to that I can photograph myself. But, I'll share that with Matt, in the coming weekend, and he'll share that with you guys, so you can be ready to draw along with me next. Matt, are we going back to Wednesdays next week?
Oh, yes. Good point. Yeah. Next week, we will be on Wednesday instead of Thursday. We're on Thursday for a temporary amount of time, and that time has passed.
All right.
And so next week, Gettin Sketchy will be on Wednesday instead of Thursday. So, all right. Do you have anything else for the folks?
I think that's it. I'm good. Thank you guys for your comments, for chatting with me today.
All right, guys, we've got to hustle, or I've got to hustle to get all this out of here and get all the charcoal in. So for those of you who are members, we'll see you in just a minute. For the rest of you, have a wonderful week, and good night.